Do you want to learn how to do three-dimensional letters just like this? Stay tuned. I'm going to show you how to do that right now.
Creator Massive.
Welcome to Creator Massive. My name's Kato, and today I'm going to show you how to draw and understand three-dimensional letters. I've done a couple of different examples, starting with this one here. Now, this three-dimensional letter is coming up from the ground towards the sky, and it has a slight bit of perspective on it. You can see that by the lines starting to taper in at the bottom a bit. I'll show you another example. So this one here is a much more extreme type of 3D. It's coming from the bottom left-hand side of the page, and it's traveling up to the top right-hand side of the page. You're getting more of a perspective on those lines. It's a bit more extreme, a lot more dramatic. And I've done another simple type, which is just like this one here. Now, this doesn't have any kind of extreme perspective. It's not bending the lines much. It's just moving from the left and pushing out to the right slightly. Now, drawing a three-dimensional letter takes a lot of the properties from drawing a drop shadow on a letter and just expands on it a little bit. For those of you that haven't seen my video on how to draw a drop shadow, I'll put a link up the top and also down in the description below. Go check that out. That may help you with this lesson here. Okay, let me explain what I mean by it having similar properties to a drop shadow. Basically, what's happening is there's a bottom layer that's pushing up to the top layer, like you would have in a drop shadow. If I remove those lines, you see it looks just like a drop shadow. It's pushed quite far away from the letters, so as a drop shadow it's a little bit confusing. But if you come in and you connect the corners of these letters from the bottom layer to the top layer, you'll start to have a three-dimensional block letter. And that's what's happening here. And how you would draw this in without having any reference, you would determine the direction which you want the 3D to travel, which in this case, it would be going from the right-hand side to the left-hand side. And then what you would do is you would choose how deep you want the 3D to go. So let's say we want it to go that deep. You would then go to each corner and draw a line that long. Then what you do, once you've drawn those lines, the distance that you want, you would then copy the edge that is facing that direction. So in this case, that one to there. Then you would copy this line down to here, and you copy it until it just disappears behind another 3D element, or the line finishes. And it's always moving the same direction, the same distance, until it disappears underneath the letter or underneath another 3D element. And then you would copy this edge out to here. And always remember that line, that reference line, the distance. If you get a bit stuck and you're not sure what to do, and you would just repeat that whole thing around the whole letter here. Certain points, like in the top of the 3 here, it's already traveling that same direction, so you would just draw a straight line out until you have to start bending for that curved line. So it starts as a straight line, it just appears from underneath the letter, and then get some of these reference lines in there to figure out how far it has to come out. I may have even done it a little too close there. You might be able to actually just, like so. And that's basically how you would do that kind of 3D. You just continue the thing for the whole piece, and you would have a nice uniform 3D like so. Alright, let's have a look at a different type of 3D. Now this one here, this is more of a perspective 3D. So you can see here that these letters are coming from a smaller version of themselves up to a larger version of themselves. And that's just due to the perspective, the point of view that we're looking at them makes it look like it's coming from smaller to larger. So let me show you what the bottom layer on that looks like. That's it there. So you see it's slightly smaller than the top layer. So when you would be copying those bottom edges, they're all going to be slightly smaller than the top edges. I'll show you what I mean. That on the L there, it's the same direction, it's the same distance from the letter, it's just slightly smaller than the top layer. Now, to draw in something like this, I'll show you how. So let me get rid of that reference layer. And what you would do is you would determine, first of all, which direction you want the 3D to go in, which in our case is straight down, but we want it to look like it is growing, getting larger or coming closer towards us. So on these outer edges, we would draw in roughly how we want it to taper. So the same thing here on the S. So those outermost edges are going to have the most bend on the line, the most angle on the line. And the same thing up with the 3 and the D. Now if I was to draw those lines straight through, you notice there should probably be about there. As you get closer towards the center, the angle of the lines will start to straighten up. And just like in all the other versions of the 3Ds that we've been doing, these lines that are going from the top layer to the bottom layer should all be the same distance, travel the same distance, unless they are going behind the top layer. Like up here, that line is obviously going to stop when it hits there because it starts to disappear behind the letters. But if it's out in the open, like these ones here, it would be traveling the same distance. And then you would come in and start to copy the edge that's facing the 3D, like that, or on the 3 here, come along. And you would travel around the whole piece and do the same thing. Now, using a ruler can be handy to get in some light lines to know where the direction is going. So like I've done here with these reference lines, you may want to do the same thing with a ruler, because you can travel over the piece and kind of see where those lines would go. So just now I'll draw them over the top just so you can see what I mean. But you can start to pick points and line them up against the other lines that you've created, just to make sure that there's a nice smooth change from straight in the middle to slightly more of an angle on the outer edges. So by drawing in those reference lines, it makes it, you can just come back with a rubber and you can get rid of bits that you don't need. And you'll have some reference lines in there that will help make sense of your 3D and what direction it's traveling. Like so. And then by the end of it, all of those lines are going to be traveling the same distance down, and they're going to be connecting to that bottom layer, and you're going to end up with a 3D that looks like that. Alright, let me show you one last version of 3D, similar to the last one that we just did, except it's a lot more extreme, and here it is. So you can see the bottom layer is much smaller and further away, but it's using the same principles as what we did on the last one. You would come in and draw your outermost edges to give you an idea of where you wanted it to where you wanted it to travel or what you wanted the overall 3D to look like. So just like I've put in here with these red lines. Now you know the most angular lines that you'll be needing. Then you can go in and draw your middle point or middle reference line, which would be straight. The direction of the 3D is traveling down that middle line. That's your main reference line. So once you've got in your outermost edges and your center line, then you can go along and slowly, you can go from the inside out or the outside in, but you would slowly be straightening up that line or bringing it out on an angle. So if you're coming from the outside in, you're going to have more of an extreme angle from the corners that you're drawing, and then it's slightly going to straighten up as it gets to the middle. Or if you go from the middle outwards, it'll do the opposite and it'll start to bend more to meet up with that most extreme angle on the S. That one is a little bit extreme. I would probably use a ruler to do that kind of thing. It's quite a massive 3D, but you know, you can end up with results like that. It's a lot more extreme than the other ones. It's a little bit trickier to deal with, but let me show you some other ways you can do it as well. Alright, so with this bottom layer, you could just bring it in slightly closer. It'd probably be a little bit easier to deal with. And then the line's not going to travel as far. But the same thing, all these lines, they're traveling the same distance, but like in the other example I showed you, the bottom layer, the bottom edge that you're drawing, is considerably smaller than the top edge. It's the same as it's just smaller because it's perceived to be further away. And then again, you would just go around the whole piece and bring all of those letters. This becoming a lot more extreme. This is a little bit more to the left-hand side. But all those lines, they're the same distance. They're just moving to a smaller point, so they start to taper inwards a little bit. I would suggest trying a whole bunch of different 3Ds. If you have any Photoshop software or an iPad or anything where you can do these kind of examples, it is really good to just help you understand what's happening behind the scenes and how you can manipulate it. And just trying it in different positions and connecting up those corner lines and just seeing what kind of results you can get with your 3D. Really just try and push it and get your head around it. Try as many different examples as you can, and you'll just keep getting better and better at it. And then you can just draw it on the fly. It's obviously a lot more difficult to do these extreme perspectives. But yeah, you know, sky's the limit. So if you keep at it, it's going to start to look amazing, and as long as you're having fun, you're going to end up nailing it anyway. So there you have it, a guide on how to create 3D letters. If you have any questions about today's lesson, just put them in the comments down below and I'll be sure to get back to you. If you haven't watched my video on drop shadow, I'll put a link up the top and also in the description below. That video will help you understand a lot of the things I talk about in this video as well, so they both work hand in hand. Thanks for stopping by, and I'll see you next time. Peace. Hey guys, I'm Kato. If you like what you saw in this video, give it a thumbs up down below and hit that subscribe button so you stay up to date with all the videos I'm doing. You can have a look at some of them right now, just over here. Thanks for tuning in, and I look forward to seeing you guys next time.